It's 12:10. You're listening to the BBC Asia Network with me, Nomia Iqbal. Now, in Afghanistan, sadly, bombings seem to be the norm. And over the weekend, a suicide bombing in Jalalabad killed 19 Afghan Sikhs, including the only Sikh candidate who'd been planning to stand in elections in October. Islamic State group said it carried out the attack. Now, small communities of Sikhs have been living in the country for thousands of years, but they say they've been persecuted and it's getting worse. If you are listening and you know about this and are directly affected or indirectly, do let me know. Do you know Afghan Sikhs who've been affected by violence, and perhaps you're Sikh and really worried about the plight of Afghans there and want more attention focused on it? Do get in touch. Let me just tell you the text number is 81869. Do email me as well, thebigdebate@bbc.co.uk. To talk more about this, I'm joined by Pritpal Singh, who is an Afghan Sikh UK community figure, also filmmaker of a documentary called Mission Afghanistan, and also joining me is Jasveer Singh from the Sikh Press Association. It's good to have you both with me. Pritpal, if I can come to you first and just get from you an overview of exactly what is happening to Sikhs in Afghanistan.
A group of Sikh people, delegates from Kabul and across Afghanistan, they were meant to visit the president in Jalalabad. That's the capital of the Nangarhar province in eastern Afghanistan yesterday. They had an appointment with the president. They were going to see the president. A suicide bomber attacked them at the gate of the governor's house. The latest information I have now, as of today, 16 Sikhs, 2 Hindus were killed in this attack in all. And there are many more who are injured. They are in the hospital at the moment.
And what's the reaction been like to what's happened here?
I mean, we all appalled. We are in a very depressed and sad situation for the whole community. Don't forget, I mean, Afghan Hindu and Sikh community is very tiny in Afghanistan. Majority of us left Afghanistan in the past 40 years. The big wave of the migration that happened was during the Mujahideen period in 1992 and 96. That was when the Mujahideen were in power. We left because of the civil war. Only tiny minority left in Afghanistan. We are very sorry what happened yesterday. And the whole community, wherever we are in the diaspora, in the UK, in India, in Germany, Australia, Austria, America, Canada, we're all shocked and in pain, great pain.
Jasveer, if I can come to you, can I just get your reaction to what happened over the weekend?
I mean, it's, as somebody who speaks to the Sikh community at large about kind of Sikh community issues, it's really devastated the entire community. I've seen lots of Sikh community figures from all over, not just the UK, but the world, kind of send their solidarity, showing solidarity with the Afghani Sikhs. It's an ongoing issue, as Pritpal Singh just mentioned. It's something that has kind of gone back years, and is something that really needs to be drastically looked at. We need we've seen a lot of kind of foreign intervention in situations out in countries like Afghanistan, more persecuted communities, and I really think that the Afghan Sikh community needs to be taken into consideration for this, especially when just last year we were seeing stories about Afghan Sikhs desperately seeking entry into countries like the UK, or just escaping Afghanistan any way they could, and sometimes through illegal means. But when that happens, we really need to look into why they're trying to escape, and I think this really demonstrates that.
Yeah. I just want to get an understanding of the treatment of Afghani Sikhs. Pritpal, if I can come to you on this,
Sure.
What is it like if you are Sikh living in Afghanistan?
See, when I left Afghanistan at a very young age, at that time, I hear stories from my dad, my grandparents. Before the instability, which is 40 years, has been there for the last 40 years, before things were very nice. We had a very good, close relationship with our neighbors, with people of our community, between different ethnic groups in Afghanistan. They were living in a peace and in harmony. Since the civil war and instability in Afghanistan, the mentality has become a bit harsh towards the ethnic minority in Afghanistan. For example, our children, they don't go to normal primary school or secondary school to receive education because they get bullied because they wear patka or turban. Many of the young other people use a derogatory term called kachalu, which stands for a potato, for example, to the kids. So they tend to receive an education in the Gurdwara. So they haven't had education to go to primary school or secondary school.
So the children don't get a fair education?
No, they don't get a fair education. Also, a lot of our private properties owned by private individuals in Afghanistan, as well as Gurdwaras and mandirs across Afghanistan, they're forcefully occupied. For example, I give you Kandahar in southern Afghanistan, and there are over 20 Gurdwaras and mandirs. Only a handful, just 2 of them are in our control. The rest of them are forcefully occupied. They were given by the caretakers when the majority left, and some of the caretakers they're not giving back. And the legal system is not very well. The government is trying. The President Ashraf Ghani, we are grateful to him. He's doing very much in his power, what he can, with the limited resources he got at the moment to help the community, help everybody in Afghanistan. It's just the corruption that is in the way. So when I visited to provinces such as Parwan, Kabul, Ghazni, Jalalabad, there are many disputes. I mean, for example, my dad, he has his clinic in old part of Kabul in Shor Bazaar. It's been forcefully occupied by somebody, and you don't get that.
Jasveer, you mentioned that you are in contact with families, and I wonder if, you know, obviously they are desperate to flee because of all the everything that they're facing, as Pritpal outlined there, as you have as well. But do they want to leave? They want to. That's their home, right? And what they need is help in tackling all the problems that they face. So do they see their future there, or do they want to leave Afghanistan?
I mean, that's definitely not something for me to kind of speak on in regards to the kind of overall sentiment of the Afghani community in the Sikh Afghani community.
But what do they tell you? The people that you have been in contact with, what do they tell you?
That I kind of do speak with, and they do come through the likes of Pritpal Singh, who's on this call with me. I mean, the general kind of gist of what I'm getting is that they want to leave, if I'm honest. The country is kind of run a certain way, and it's been run a certain way for decades now, where the Sikhs just don't feel safe. Whereas, you know, our Afghan Sikh brothers and sisters, they come over to countries like the UK and they can live freely. They can kind of prosper. They can, you know, get into enterprise, and they can better themselves. So the general gist of what I'm hearing from them is that they would like to leave. And just touching on the point very quickly about kind of, you know, that is their home and they'd like to change it. Isn't that what was meant to have happened when we saw the likes of UK and the USA kind of step in to intervene and tackle the Taliban in Afghanistan? So, I mean, you know, this should already be in motion. How much longer do minority communities like the Sikhs and like the Hindus have to wait for, foreign intervention to kind of do what they set out to do? I mean, you know, could be waiting kind of an indefinite period, within which time Sikhs will be living as they are now in Afghanistan, where they can't get a fair education. They can't even take care of their deceased properly. Even funerals, having Sikh funerals there is a massive issue. So, I mean, these things really need to be considered when we're thinking about how they feel out there.
Pritpal, would you agree with what Jasveer is saying there? And I'd like to know what you think the future is for Sikhs in Afghanistan.
Absolutely. I want to add on, for example, the issue we have with the cremation. I went to see the cremation ground in Kalacha, in the old part of Kabul. There, when our people, they want to take the dead bodies for cremation, in the past, the cremation was in an isolated place, took place in an isolated place. And now, as the population is increasing, nearby houses are building up, and they object to the cremation. They said bad smells comes out. So they object that, and often we have to resort to the protection of the government, of the Kabul police, local police, to help us with the cremation. That's one example. Now, since the U.S.-led war in Afghanistan, we had the government of Mr. Karzai and Mr. Ashraf Ghani in last 20 years. We've had two Sikh MPs, Anarkaliko Hunariyar and Avtar Singh Khalsa. They were both appointed, not elected, but appointed by the government, right? But still, the issue remains unresolved. Community as a whole were hopeful that, we're going to have somebody who's going to get elected in the upcoming October election. So there was a moral boost for everyone. But now, since I've been talking to my contacts from Afghanistan, to friends and family, opinion is very much divided. Some of them, they say we're going to stay and carry on. The other ones saying, no, this is the time we're going to leave. Now, just today, some people from Jalalabad, they had to go to the Indian consulate to seek refuge. They say,
I wanted to ask you about that, because India's issued long-term visas, hasn't it, to members of the Sikh, as well as Hindu communities, I should add. And what's your viewpoint on that? On
it's great. Any place safer for community is fantastic. India is a safe country, of course. So if India does it, but the problem with India is we've seen the Sikh community living in India for over 30 years. But the problem with the Indian legal system is they do not issue citizenship to refugees. So you had Indian refugees or children who are born and bred in India of the Afghan descent. They do not get citizenship of India. They don't have the same rights as Indian people. Of course, there's no civil war. They are more secure. But I think India needs to do something more to look after the minorities coming from Afghanistan. Hindus and Sikhs, granting them passports, citizenship within maximum 5 years or 6 years.
That's one thing. That's one thing. Yeah. Do you want? Sorry, Jasveer, do you want to say something? I was going to ask that. That's one thing. But do you think? Do you think there should be something more here going on? Because there are some who would say, well, there should be a global Muslim leadership potentially to intervene to stop the persecution of Sikhs happening here. If I can come to you on that, Pritpal, do you think there should be a bigger sort of intervention by global Muslim leadership, perhaps?
Well, since I posted the information, the tragic information on our Facebook page yesterday, I have lots of followers who are, the majority of them are Muslims from Afghanistan. They have condemned this attack. They are showing solidarity. For example, Ravel Singh, he was a spokesperson for our community in Afghanistan, the deputy head of Afghan Hindu State Council who was killed. If you look at his Facebook page, which I've been seeing yesterday, he's got so much overwhelming support and from the Muslim community in Afghanistan. But how can you stop ISIS? They have a different set of mind. They are brainwashed. They don't listen to anybody. So that's a problem, I understand. We welcome any intervention by the global Muslim community to show solidarity with us. Is fantastic. They should do it, of course. But people like ISIS, they are brutal people. Just 3 days ago, they butchered, they killed, decapitated 3 Afghan soldiers in Jalalabad 3 days ago. Just 3 days ago at the hospital. So, and they are, of course, they're Muslims as well. They're soldiers. Yeah. And we belong to different faiths altogether.
Jasveer's back with us. And Jasveer, I was just asking Pritpal, we mentioned there about the India consulate helping people, giving them long-term visas, but also should there be an intervention by global Muslim leadership, essentially, to stop this persecution happening?
Just listening to what Pritpal Singh said there, I think it's kind of clear that the biggest victims of groups like ISIS and other Islamic fundamentalist extremist groups are in fact Muslims. So, there's only kind of so much that, only so little, I guess, actually, really, that any Muslims that connect with the Sikh community, show empathy for the Afghan Sikhs out there can really do in regard to kind of really dealing with the situation. I think there's a lot of people, whether it's Sikhs or whether it's other Muslims, or even whether it's just kind of well-wishing people from other nations like the USA, like the UK, where they felt they kind of would change the situation in Afghanistan through the government intervening. I think they all kind of feel a bit helpless right now upon hearing the situation. And the only kind of immediate short-term answer that has been made apparent to me is Afghan Sikhs is leaving the country, which is why we've seen them doing that en masse over the last kind of 10, 15, 20 years. And
you think that will continue? Probably,
almost definitely will continue, because until another answer comes out, I mean, Muslim community leaders can come out and show solidarity, and we can hold a rally, we can do anything as such, but the threat remains to the lives of the Afghan Sikhs and the Afghan Hindus out there. And again, it's not just kind of these threats of murder, essentially. It's the everyday living. They can't even go to school, as Pritpal Singh just kind of iterated today on this call. So just bear that in mind.
Thank you so much for your time, both of you, to talk about this important news story. That's Pritpal Singh there, an Afghan Sikh UK community figure, also the filmmaker of a documentary called Mission Afghanistan, and Jasveer Singh there from the Sikh Press Association, talking about the suicide bombing that happened in Jalalabad over the weekend, killing 19 Afghan Sikhs, including the only Sikh candidate who'd been planning to stand in elections in October. The Islamic State group said it carried out the attack. The president of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan has tweeted, Ashraf Ghani, saying, "Our hearts are broken for the families of our fellow Afghans who were lost in the Jalalabad attack. I am saddened at the loss of our proud and resilient Sikh Afghans. I had the honour of interacting with some of them many times in the past."